How's it going, everyone? Welcome to episode 1 of Fight Game Chronicles. I am your host, James Lynch, joined by my co-host, Kevin, Froggie, Mubenga, here on the program, man. How's it going? I'm excited to start this episode 1 here.
Man, it's been a very good week, a lot of exciting fights, a lot of exciting action, and I'm looking forward to starting this first episode with you.
Yeah, it's going to be great. For those who don't know me, I'm a journalist / content creator, kind of somewhere in the middle. I work for a bunch of different websites, including here on Fanatics View. Just started there a couple weeks ago doing boxing, MMA interviews. So there's going to be a lot of combat sports talk in here. This isn't just an MMA show. We'll be covering some boxing as well. A lot of good stuff to talk about, and definitely be touching on the Tyson Jones thing, which happened on the weekend. But first, Kevin, little intro to you. You managed some pretty notable fighters, particularly Nick and Nate Diaz. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your involvement in combat sports?
Yeah, man. So I manage boxers and I manage MMA fighters. Nick and Nate are some guys I work with. Gabe Rosado is another guy I work with. Tristan Calaruth, who's a top 25 prospect of 2019. I work with him too. He's over there at Golden Boy. And so I've been, in the fight business for a little while. Started off with Jean Pascal back in the days, and she's been working ever since, so it's just a beautiful sport, and I'm really excited to be here and to be able to share a lot of this knowledge, a lot of this game with a lot of our fans here. And Fanatic Views is obviously a company Taylor, my friend Taylor, started off with, and then I've been on board with him for the last 4 or 5 years. So we've been doing this, so I've been handling management, but I've also been handling the media.
And doing some great interviews, man. It's funny because we obviously had met for the first time, I think a week ago. We did a video call and we've never met in person or anything, but I definitely have seen your interviews before. So it was cool to go back and watch some of the stuff. And that's why I'm so excited about coming together. Because, sometimes when it's you get someone who's not used to doing interviews or anything, it's how's the chemistry going to be? But after that call last week, I'm super excited. And we're both Canadian. That's kind of cool too. So,
yeah, right.
Shout out to that. Dope. Shout out to the Great White North.
And we share a passion for the sport, right?
Absolutely.
For combat. So, we see it as an art, and we enjoy, breaking it down and really just spreading the knowledge to people,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get right into it, man. Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. What a week to start this podcast after that event.
Yeah.
That was, man, I got to tell you, I listen to sports talk radio in the car anytime I'm out doing anything. That's all everyone was talking about this weekend. This was huge. The UFC was nowhere near the radar of Tyson and Jones Jr. No offense to Anthony Smith, but it was the talk of the town. It ended up as a draw. Just your thoughts on the main event, because you know what, for two 50-year-olds, I thought it was pretty good. What did you think?
It was exciting. Exciting. I was excited from the beginning of the card all the way to the end. And the first 2 fights were actually really, really good fights. There was a 126er guys at 126 fighting, and the other one was at 135, I believe. But it was really good fights that we saw prior to that. And then the entertainment aspect of it, having all the artists come out and perform in between the fights, it kind of turned it into an actual, spectacle, an event, more than just a fight card. So it was exciting. And then once we got to the main event, prior to the main event, Jake Paul and Nate Robinson, that was a sight to see. It was exciting, people tuned in, people wanted to see it, and they lived up to the hype, in my opinion, because once we got to Mike and Roy Jones, then it was just great to see. It was good to see,
Yeah, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, because we'll get into obviously the Jake Paul stuff. There's a lot of critics saying it's bad for boxing. I'm not of that belief. I think it's good. You bring different eyeballs. You bring the tweener audience, the teens, the kids who have watched these guys on YouTube. Now you're watching boxing as well. I think it's good to get that extra exposure because, again, it just adds a little bit more. Like Jones and Tyson could have done this card on their own. I mean, people would still watch, but to have a Jake Paul on there who's someone that, whether you love him or hate him, you don't have to love him as a person. The guy creates good content. He's known for being on YouTube. This is what a celebrity is now. It's not like your actor back in the day. YouTube celebrities are real celebrities now. So I think, it's good to kind of mix this up. I mean, how many people watch KSI and Logan Paul, to see Jake Paul fight here against an NBA player, Nate Robinson, who I used to watch shooting buckets for the Knicks, right? It's interesting. I think there is an intrigue. And I also want to remind people that, when Fox used to do celebrity boxing, that's one of their highest rated shows of all time was the celebrity boxing. I remember when Joey Buttafuoco fought China. That I found this out after that had bigger numbers than any of the UFC cards that were ever on Fox. Like, think about that. There is an intrigue for this type of celebrity boxing and all that. By the way, if you guys have any questions, if you're watching this live, submit them in the YouTube chat. We will get to them as we're going along here. Kevin and I are going to be talking a lot, but we will get to your questions as soon as you can. So just post them in there. We'll post them on the screen. But yeah, what is your thoughts on sort of the YouTube, stars kind of mingling in with these legends?
Well, I'll tell you what. The first time we heard about this type of things happening was, I believe, about a year or two ago. Me and Taylor and Fanatic Views actually covered the first YouTube fighter to fight on a card. It was with DAZN and Eddie Hearn. And, we have a good relationship with Eddie Hearn and those guys over there. So, we had full access to that. And you were able to automatically see the numbers spike on YouTube all across the board anytime they were covering these guys, right? So you saw the effect. You saw the internet effect of what they could do. Now, it came down to, do they have the skill sets to be able to entertain, and would they respect the sport and fine-tune their craft to be able to perform? And, they're not fighting professional fighters, but they're training and they're training hard. One thing that people got to take into account is who was in Jake Paul's corner. BJ Flores was in his corner. That's a former cruiserweight titleist. He's a professional trainer. And I got a chance to really talk with him about a year ago while we were in Miami in February when Jake fought the other YouTube dude. It was with Devin Haney on that card. And we got to talk. I said, man, look, I said, these guys ain't any good. I said, because I haven't seen them train. I haven't seen anything at that point. And he told me, Kevin, I'm telling you, man, this guy, he could go. He just needs to put in more hours and put in more time, but he could go. I'm like, all right. He's like, he'll definitely he said he'll beat the shit out of all these guys. I said, okay. I said, all right. So we got to see that fight. It was he beat a little guy. It was 30, 40 seconds. He beat him. It was nothing crazy. It was like one round. And then, but to see what he looked like then in February and to see what he looks like now, it's like I could see that he's been training. So that's a year and a half straight of training. Boxing and mixed martial arts, it's a rinse and repeat. You got to do it every single day to get good at it, and the more you do it, the better you get. So he put in the time, and I saw that this weekend.
And the advantage with Jake as well, aside from the fact that, he obviously has a lot of money being a YouTube celebrity. So he has money to go and get the type of training, and being in California, which is like a great place to be, right? Like, it's not like he's in Alaska trying to get boxing training. He's got, a lot of at his disposal as well. But on top of that, he's a young guy. This isn't like a CM Punk situation where he's leaving WWF or WWE, I should say, and coming over and he's in his, mid 30s. Like, at least, like you said, the improvements, that's not something you'd necessarily see. And I'm glad you brought that up about the improvements as well, because I actually it was entertaining. Like, when you watch, no offense to CM Punk, great guy, he's a big hockey fan too, don't want to talk too much smack, but I mean, here's a guy that, when you watch that fight, you're like, this doesn't belong on a UFC broadcast. But when you're watching that boxing fight with Nate Robinson and Jake Paul, I mean, I'm entertained. I don't know. Like, to me, it's different. It's a better recipe as opposed to getting some guys a little bit older. And that's why I do think this is going to be a thing. And I think it's going to be successful because they can get guys that are a little bit younger and maybe, that are out there. Like, even Logan Paul, like, he's not an old guy. He's young, right? So I think you can see those improvements, right?
These guys are young guys. They're 23, 24 years old. These guys are young guys. They're getting into the sport late, but, having youth on your side and also being able to have access to be able to get the right training and the right nutrition and the right to be able to, to get down in weight and to be able to, put the work in. This camp, I believe they did it in Vegas because BJ's gym is in Vegas. You get good sparring in Vegas, right? You get good sparring partners, and he cruiserweight, so he came in at 189 or something like that, and Nate came in at 183, and right away, I looked at Nate's corner, I said, who's that guy? I've never seen that guy in my life. Who's that trainer? Who's these guys? Who's he training with? Who's he sparring? And once I said, this is going to be a bad night, because it really comes down to, who's in your corner. When you got guys that are novice who've not been in the sport for a long time, they really are reliant on the advice from their corners and the people that's been in the sport to be able to guide them and teach them how to properly perform. And right away, I could see that, he has BJ in his corner, and I was like, no go. But again, they did 1.2 million, for the card. And I feel like, the YouTube guys have a lot to do with that.
Big time.
Either way, it was going to sell, but I think that those guys generate numbers. And to be able to have a platform like Triller, who's also, that's TikTok before TikTok, essentially, be the one that put this on, connected the two worlds perfectly,
I completely agree. We got some questions coming in. We'll pop them up here on the screen. This is going to be cool for you, Kevin, because I don't think you've seen this before. But here we got our first question from Decon305. He says, should Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield do the trilogy? Do you think that would be just as good as Roy Jones and Tyson? That's honestly the first thing I thought of after this fight, because Holyfield came out with the tweet, and I'm thinking, like, there's a history there. There's a whole ear thing. What do you think? You're more of a boxing guy than I am. Is that a fight you'd want to see?
Well, first of all, once the Mike Tyson rumor started, 4 months ago, Evander started training and started posting videos of himself training. That's right. And getting ready. And I said, oh, okay. He lit the fire. It doesn't take much to get these guys going. Boxers and mixed martial artists are fighters in general are guys that are, no matter how old they get, they've been training for so long and have done it for such a long period of time that mentally they believe that they could do it. All it takes is give them 4 or 5 months, 6 months to get ready, and they'll be ready. This is just how they think, so they think like that forever, so I see a guy determined to do it, but the body, it just comes down if their body would make it to the fight. You saw Mike trilogy. Okay, you saw Mike. Mike looked good. Mm-hmm. Mike looked good for a 54-year-old. For a 54-year-old, 53-year-old, he looked good, right? Like, but and Roy, Roy didn't look as good. He didn't look as good. But Roy's style, he needs to be able to be in really, really good shape to be able to fight that kind of style. It's a lot of movement to where Mike is everything's tight and compact, and it's burst. He's bursting. So and Roy didn't have enough to do what he needed to do. His mind was able, but his body was unable to follow him for 8 rounds at that kind of high level with that kind of style. So Evander and Mike, would that be as good? Sure. I mean, Evander's 56. Yeah, sure. I mean, it was so funny. We interviewed Evander Holyfield about a year and a half ago, and we asked him if he was in shape, and he always stays in shape. And his son is a fighter now. Evander's 58 actually. Yeah, so he's a bit older. So I mean, it'd be good to see. Shannon Briggs is another guy they bring up. Lennox Lewis is a name they brought up. Those would be interesting.
There's a lot of names out there, and I don't think Evander needs the money, by the way. I watched that. Have you ever seen that Back in the Game show with Alex Rodriguez? It's on MSNBC. It's a show where he basically takes like athletes that have retired and they've run into financial problems. Anyways, they did an episode with Evander. I watched it about a year ago, so it's interesting timing with all this. And apparently Evander was like in all these bad business deals. Did you know that he had like a fire hydrant, or not a fire hydrant, the fire extinguisher? He was like part of a brand for that, which had nothing to do with boxing. And so Alex Rodriguez, who like hosts the show, he's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, we got to get you something that like you're actually involved in. So by the sounds of it, I don't know what's happened since that episode, but it seemed like he got his finances in order. I don't think he was in deep trouble, but he was attached to a lot of just dumb stuff. And Alex Rodriguez kind of grilled him for it. Well,
we speaking of grill, he had a barbecue.
That too. That was the other
meat.
thing.
It was a meat company. Well, yeah, it was a meat barbecue company or something like that, and that's what he was promoting. While he was on his press tour or media obligations during our Super Bowl about 2 years ago, and that's where we really got to talk about the other side businesses that he has. He's an entrepreneur, so he created a bunch of businesses off of his brand and his name. So it's beautiful to see, because a lot of these older fighters don't get to do stuff like that. So it's beautiful to see.
It is. We got another question kind of related to the card. How long till CM Punk versus Jake Paul in MMA? I don't think they fight in MMA. There's no money there. You go in boxing. Look, the reason this boxing card worked is because these guys are doing it on their terms. They're the commodity. If they go into the UFC banner, the UFC is going to make it about them being the commodity, not the boxers. That's why the boxing model, UFC model is a little bit different. I think if they did fight, it would be outside of the UFC. Now, I don't know what CM Punk's contract status is. I think he can do whatever he wants. I know he's doing wrestling now. He's doing some commentating. I don't know if you have any insight to that, but I think if they did fight, it would have to be. And I don't think CM takes that fight. I mean, after everything happened.
So last summer, Logan Paul approached us. The Diaz brothers, who I work with, train also in LA. So we're in LA. We're located in LA in Stockton, California is where they train us, where the main gym and the headquarters at. And we run into Logan. We met Logan probably a year or two ago, a while back, and and he's like, "Yo, guys, I wanna start training mixed martial arts." And we were building the gym in LA last year, and he said, "Yeah, I'd like to come to you guys. I saw you guys are building a gym. I see the logo up there. Can I come train with you guys?" And Nick was like, "Yeah, man, let's bring him in. We told him he could come in one time or whatnot." And he sounded like he was really excited about doing it. And he hit me up. He's like, "Hey, you guys training or whatnot?" But we ended up leaving, going back to Stockton. We were on a different schedule. But so I see that there. I think that what's happened is they found a love for the sport, or just appreciation for the actual art, and they know that they can monetize off of it because it's an interesting thing to see them. People want to see fights, but these guys, they know that people want to see them lose, and they don't mind putting it on the line because they have confidence in themselves to be able to win those fights. CM Punk, I don't know if the demand is there to see him in mixed martial arts. I feel like that boat has sailed. Anything can happen in this kind of a world now that we live in,
Yeah, we'll see. Anything's possible, I think, at this point. That's crazy. We got another question kind of about Jake Paul. Does he beat Dylan Dennis in boxing? Here's my take on Dylan Dennis. He's with Bellator. I don't think Scott Coker lets him out and does like sort of a fun fight like that. Maybe he does, but I just think Dylan's a commodity for Bellator. People will tune in. He's not a huge commodity, but he's a guy that, talks a lot of trash. He's Conor McGregor's buddy. Like, I could see them just keeping him there, continuing to give him sort of tune-up fights as they've been doing. And I don't think you will see him go over there because Dylan's a jiu-jitsu guy. Why would he box Jake Paul? Good suggestion, by the way, but I don't see it happening. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't see that happening either. I don't see that happening. I mean, first of all, isn't he coming off an injury right now? I thought he just had an injury or surgery or whatnot. And I don't know, man. I've never seen him striking. He goes right to the ground when it comes to it. But I mean, he probably believes in his striking, or more specifically in his hands, because striking is feet and hands. But he probably believes in his hands enough to be able to go in there and try to do it. But again, what is he, like 160 pounds, 150
pounds?
I forget
what weight class. I'm gonna look it up right now.
Jake is what, 185, 180, 189, 190. So
yeah, he's a bigger guy.
Weight. To be able to, where would they meet at? What weight would they meet at?
Well, looks like Dylan's a welterweight. Now here, what would he compete last?
170.
Yeah, it was 175. Of course, Bellator, the catchweight league, right? They do that all the time. Which I don't know.
So 185 is not that far off. Yeah, he could be. It
could be potential. Okay, last thing on this card, we've talked a lot about it. Do you have to mention MMA Fight Picks? My buddy Aaron, shout out to Aaron, who runs the Ally Quinta Realty account, one of the best accounts on Twitter. If you aren't following that, highly recommend doing that. But he says, I don't like trilogies where someone's already lost twice, referring to Holyfield. You know what, though, Aaron? I'll say this. Most fans, newer fans, I bet they don't even remember about Holyfield and Tyson unless you go back and watch it on YouTube. I remember it because I'm old enough where I remember the ear, bite and all that other stuff. But I think that's something people would still watch now because they didn't see it live. So I think there is an audience for it. So what do you think, Kevin?
I think that it depends on how they lost, right?
Yeah.
You look at like Manny Pacquiao and Marquez, right? I mean, you could argue that Marquez won one or two of those other fights. He lost on paper. It's Pacquiao had won two, and they had drawed one, and going into that fourth fight, Marquez knocks him out. So, but three of those fights prior to that fourth fight could have went to Marquez. At least two of them could have went to Marquez, especially the draw. So yeah, but with Tyson and Holyfield, yeah, I mean, people would want to see it, so that's what it is. They just want to see it. But I don't know. Do you think that's the best fight you can make for Mike after that? Do you think that's the best? What do you think?
I think it's going to depend on the name. I think Holyfield's a name. Lennox Lewis is a name. You got to get a name in there that Tyson could be, look okay again. Like he can't fight obviously like someone like new, right? I don't think there'd be any interest. I think you capitalize on the name the same way that Bellator did that when they brought over the UFC heavyweights. You matched up like Amir and Roy Nelson or something, right? Like I think the same thing would apply here where Tyson's not going to fight nobody. He's got to fight someone with a decent name and someone that he's going to look like. Roy Jones was a good matchup. Roy was 51, I think, or something, right? So it's like one of those things where you kind of match those guys up and it made sense, but you're obviously limited.
How old is Shannon Briggs? How old is Shannon Briggs?
Shannon Briggs is another name I would put up there. Shannon Briggs.
That'd be a good one. I think that.
What is he? He's got to be.
He's younger than Mike. He got to be 50.
48.
48. Okay.
Yeah, he's 48.
Yeah. He's younger than Mike, so I like that one. That's not bad. He stays around boxing. So that'd be good.
Shout out to Taylor, by the way, who suggested that in the private chat. Taylor is backstage. We're not going to bring him on today, but because I know he's a little shy. But once we get him on, it'll be all good, man. And shout out to him for making this happen because he's the one who connected us together. We got Decon 305 saying, "Love the show, subscribing to the channel and sharing it. Great so far. I like it." That's what we want to hear, people. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We're going to be doing this every Wednesday. You're going to get stuff from us that you won't get from anyone else. I interview a ton of fighters. I got a lot of stories. Kevin's got a lot of stories. We've got a lot of insight. So that's something you're not going to get from your typical shows. We don't need to talk about those shows either. Let's get to the next topic, though. We had some big news yesterday in the MMA world. Obviously, Khamzat Chimaev, Leon Edwards, December 19th. It's a no-go. First, we heard it was Khamzat Chimaev who tested positive for COVID from a Swedish outlet. Then the reports came out saying, doesn't matter, fight's good to go. Then we find out yesterday, Leon Edwards gets COVID. It was so bad, Kevin, that he had lost 12 pounds in 4 days with COVID. It was no joke with him. So he's out of the fight. They've moved it. Now, the big question here is, are they going to reschedule it? Are they going to, book Chimaev against someone else? The early look right now appears like they will rebook the fight, which I think makes sense. We'll get into the matchup in a second, but I think this was the right move of putting Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Jeff Neal, 5 rounds. That should be a 5-round fight anyways with Jeff Neal. Huge opportunity for him fighting a former title challenger in Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. But I guess my question where we'll sort of start with this first is this COVID stuff really impacting the UFC? Because they've been doing some shuffling, and I got to be honest, Kevin, they've done a pretty good job. Like we got that this weekend. We got Vettori and Hermanson, which I don't think is that much worse off than a Holland versus Hermanson, in my opinion. What do you think?
I mean, every league has to adjust now. Every professional sports league has to adjust now. And I think that it's going to be like this for a little while, to where you get cards get pulled, or guys that are headlining cards get pulled, but the card show still goes on, just depending on the time frame. I think that this is a norm. It's going to become a norm for us for another year or so, I believe. So it's just something that all of us got to get used to. The COVID thing's not a joke, obviously, as you can see how it has affected Leon Edwards and his health. So, just everybody got to make sure that they're aware of that. Nevertheless, Neil, I think that this is a big opportunity for him. Yeah. He's from Dallas. We spend a lot of time in Dallas. I've met him several times. And we've had discussions several times while he's out there. And I think this is a big, and he's another guy that got COVID before, right? He was supposed to be on the card and he had the COVID.
Supposed to fight Neil Magny.
Yeah. So, I saw him not too long ago. He looks like he's in good shape. He looks like he bounced back well. So again, it's not nothing to joke with. So, but yeah, man, big opportunity for him. 5 rounds to be able to prove himself, to be able to, test himself against a top 5 guy, I believe. So we'll see.
And this is still a great card. That's good on the UFC for making this a stat card anyways, because we lose this fight. And I'm bummed out. Trust me, I want to see Chimaev and Edwards. It was very intriguing. But I mean, look at this card. Main event, Thompson and Neal. Great type of fight night card, because you got the up-and-comer Neal who needs to prove himself. He's fighting a former title challenger. Does Wonderboy still have it? It appears that he does, but fighting a guy in Jeff Neal, who I think is going to fight for a title one day, I think this is a great opportunity for him. So you got that fight.
Oh, you think Neal will fight for a title one day?
I do. I really do. I think he's that good. I do.
Okay.
I do. We'll see. Maybe we disagree on this one, which is good because I don't think we.
No, that was a whoo. You put that out
good.
there. Yeah. You put that out there.
I'm a big believer in what I think he's doing things in that division that not everyone's doing. He's knocking guys out like Mike Perry, who, look, I know Mike Perry's not a world beater, but you go out there and you finish him. You finish a Bilal Muhammad, who's tough to finish, right? Like, this is a guy that has been making statement after every fight. We'll see how he looks. Wonderboy's no easy task. We saw that last year with Vicente Luque in New York, right? Same card as Nate and George, but it's we'll see. And then on top of that, you got the co-main event of this card is Marlon Moraes, Rob Font. Moraes losing to Corey Sandhagen. Rob Font hasn't fought in forever because of an ACL injury. Great fight for the bantamweight division. You've got Neal's teammate Ryan Spann fighting Misha Serkinov, guy I know from Toronto originally. Misha Serkinov fighting Ryan Spann, great fight. You got Jose Aldo and Marlon Chito Vera. Vera just beat Sean O'Malley. Aldo just lost a title shot. He's now fighting Vera. I mean, are you kidding me? This is like almost a pay-per-view card. How good?
What is that? Is that 135?
135. You got it. Can Aldo keep it going, or is he going to run into Chito Vera, who's just been, he'll fight anyone. He'll fight you. He'll fight his mother. That's how good this guy is. He'll fight anyone.
What's Aldo rank at 135?
We will look right now. I think he's fallen a bit, obviously, because he lost the title fight to Piotr Jan, right?
He's in the top 5 or top 10?
He's in what is he here? He's number 7. He's number 7.
And who is he fighting? Who's he fighting?
He's fighting Rob Font. So Rob Font is number 11, but Rob Font hasn't fought since, we're going to look here. I want to say it was early 2019 because he had a pretty bad ACL injury.
Yeah, those ACLs are
December.
Months.
Sorry, Font hasn't fought since December. So last December he beat Ricky Simone. So big opportunity here for Font. He's part of that New England cartel. I don't know if you're familiar with that, with him and Calvin Kattar. They're like making the shirts and stuff. They've been making a lot of noise lately. So big fight here for Font. And of course his buddy Calvin Kattar fighting Max Holloway next month. So a lot on the line here for the cartel in this one too. But kind of the point I was getting at, Kevin, is just that, and I didn't even mention, the fight that's opening up the main card is Anthony Pettis and Alex Morono, another teammate of Jeff Neal's, Alex Morono. Huge opportunity here getting to fight the former champion Pettis. I mean, this is a great card, man. I don't like, even with this fight being off, I think it's still, I'm going to be tuning into all the fights.
There's a lot of Fortis guys on that card. That's what, 3-4 guys from Fortis gym?
Neal and Morono. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is that? 3 guys?
Three guys.
Fortis?
Yeah.
From Dallas. Okay. That's cool. Right on. I like that.
So, getting back though to this, Chimaev and Edwards being off, I like that they rebooked this fight. It appears that way. Nothing's set in stone, but it looks like that's the direction they're going. And, there's a bit of politics in this. And this is something you and I talked about last week, right? Like Chimaev, 3 straight wins. He's the new Khabib in terms of hype, right? Like everyone's been talking about Masvidal. Like he's one of these guys that everyone's talking about. They're saying he's going to be the next champ. Well, you fight a Leon Edwards and you beat him decisively. You probably are ready for a title shot. Now, that's why people are like, well, get Wonderboy to fight him or get, whatever, I don't know, Neil Magny to fight him. Well, what's going to get you closer to the title? It's beating the number 3 guy. That's why they're going to keep that fight intact, because if Khamzat Chimaev wins, if he beats Leon Edwards decisively, I think he gets a title shot at 170. What do you think? You're close with Kamaru Usman. Do you think that's something that could happen?
I mean, he's winning fights, and he's won, 3 fights against 3 unranked opponents. But he did it in great fashion, right? With knockouts so knockouts always look good, always sell. I haven't seen him in a hard fight. I mean, I've seen fights prior to this. I've watched fights, where in other leagues that he's been in. So it's interesting to see how this matchup unfolds for both of them. Leon has been out for a while. I want to say maybe a year, maybe
July
more.
2019 was when he beat Rafael dos Anjos.
Yeah,
that's how long it's been. He's not even going to fight in 2020.
Yeah, for him, that's a long time, because he was fighting a little more prior to that. So if he runs through this guy, if the Dagestanian young man runs through him, then it makes a statement. It said something. But if Leon picks him apart, then Leon would keep his place in the line to be able to get the shot next. if
Well,
that
and
makes sense.
no, I totally get what you mean. And I think like people don't like this matchup. They're like, well, Chimaev doesn't have a win over a ranked opponent. Yeah, but he is the guy. This is who everyone's talking about. It's all about hype, you know, like it's like Masvidal last year, right? Like the run he went on. That's why he got the shot with Usman. You know, it's one of those things where momentum's a big thing. And I think
but Masvidal beat ranked guys, and they were
he did.
all in the top 10, 5 guys, right? I mean,
Sure.
and we can see, Ben Askren was, that guy. I told the boys, I said, yo, Dick, I'm telling you, man, you gotta go get this guy right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, go get Ben Askren. This is before the knockout, because I already knew what was going to happen to that guy.
Yeah.
We're like, this guy, and we knew that what was going to happen to him prior to that fight. The first guy that's going to get their hands on this guy the rank is going to go up because of where they have him ranked. It was a 21-0 that he was, or something like that when he came into the UFC.
Yeah.
So it was good that he caught up to him at that time. But nevertheless, he made a good run, all ranked guys, and that's how he was able to put himself in a position to fight Nate. Yeah, I mean, the Leon Edwards thing, with Chiefo, what's his name?
That's Chimaev. No, it's
Chimaev.
Yeah, Hamzat Chimaev.
Yeah, we'll see how that unfolds. But there's a lot of guys in line over there, so it's interesting.
No, big time. Kind of my point was that I think if Chimaev beats an Edwards, like, they kind of propels him to the title shot. If Leon Edwards wins, at least he's relevant again in the sense that, like, he's got a 7-fight win streak, but do you think the average fan cares about that? No, they don't. They like, honestly, like you should see the people saying that Edwards is terrible and all this stuff in the YouTube comments because they're like, because he hasn't fought in a while. And how do you get that hype back? You fight a guy that's got a lot of hype. And that's what I meant too. And I think with Masvidal, I think part of the reason he got so much hype was the knockout. If he had beat Ben Askren by decision, I don't know if he fights a Nate Diaz or he fights all these other guys, because it was that knockout that was so incredible and was on everybody's phone after the fight had happened because it was such a highlight reel knockout. That's what gets people's attention. That's what Chimaev's doing. If Chimaev won a decision against all these guys, no one cares. He's probably fighting Neil Magny, but instead he's getting to fight Leon because he's destroying these guys. He finished Gerald Meerschaert in 10 seconds. And here's the other thing I'll mention too. Even if Chimaev loses this fight, it doesn't matter because he fights at both weight classes. So if he loses at 170, he can go back up to 85 and technically he'd still be undefeated there. So that's where I think this match makes a lot of sense. I've seen a lot of people saying, let's change it. I disagree. It makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons. And like I just outlined there. So,
yep.
There you go. Wanted to also mention here, just going back to the Tyson thing here quickly. Decon says, I don't like the Shannon fight for Tyson. I think that's a little more dangerous for Tyson at this stage. What do you think about that?
I agree too. He's been around a little bit longer, and he's staying around the sport. You know what I mean? So, a guy, and Roy Jones was staying around the sport, but Shannon Briggs looks like he could borderline be fighting pro guys that are top 25, top 15, top 25. I think he can beat a lot of those guys that are that are up there, top 25, top 15, top 20, top 30. He could beat those guys, some of those guys up there in the late teens. But yeah, and I don't know if Tyson could at this stage in his career. So that's why it makes it a bit more of a dangerous fight. Good observation, Deacon 305.
For sure. Our new subscriber, really appreciate that. Also, we got Max Holloway, not the real Max Holloway, saying the Lynch brought me here. Definitely subscribing. I appreciate that. You should subscribe. I mean, Kevin's the reason here too. We're making this happen. As well. So I know we got more than a couple people in the chat. So if you guys have any questions, just leave them in there. We'll get to them. But we got a lot to talk about. Let's talk some more boxing. Errol Spence Jr., Danny Garcia. Obviously, one of the talking points is the car accident. What do you think about this fight? I think it's one of the better boxing fights this year in terms of the name value and all that. What are you looking at? Just storyline wise heading in. What are some things we should be focusing on it for a guy like me?
If I could stand on top of a mountain and just go to the highest peak of whichever the highest mountain is and just yell out who the best welterweight is, which I've been doing for the last 4 years. It's Errol Spence, bro. Mm-hmm. He is the best welterweight in the world, period. Mm-hmm. I don't doubt it for a second, and the accident happened, and it's another guy who I've known for a long time, known him for a while now, and he, I feel like this accident, I compare how he was before this and how he is now. He's less accessible. Everything's tight knit, Everything is he looks laser focused, and he looks like he's shifted. You know how some guys are like, yeah, man, I just got to a point in my life where I got to change my. It doesn't even look like it feels like a natural transition for him into this next period of his life. He's 27, 28 years old, and I feel like he knows that this is his second chance, but also he knows that this is the next level for him in his life, and that this has to be a statement win. So, and I watched the countdown, and Coach Derek, his trainer, who should have been coach. Was he coach of the year? Trainer of the year? I believe he was
He
trainer
was
of
up
the year.
there. Yeah, no, I remember that. Yeah,
he was trainer of last year. Last year he was trainer of the year, Ring Magazine trainer of the year. So I just see how they're moving it. I've been in camps with them before. I've spent quite a lot of time with them actually out there in Dallas. Another place where Dallas seems to be having a lot of fighters. We just talked about the MMA guys. Now we're talking boxing. Interesting, but yeah, I just see them looking very, very, very focused. He looks in tremendous shape, and Danny Garcia is not a guy to take lightly, and he is a top. To me, he is a top 5 welterweight in the world. You could argue top 3, top 4, definitely top 5. So in the former 2 division world champion, and he had all the belts, almost all the belts at 140, I believe, and he's had all the belts and he's had 2 belts at 147, and he's lost to other top guys only. So, he's lost to, I believe, Keith Thurman and who is it? Sean Porter. Double check who that is, whose losses are
now, if you got it.
But, it was Porter. He lost to Porter and he lost to Thurman. Correct. So those are the 2 guys he lost to. So those other 2 guys are top welterweight guys too. They're in the top 5. So he's not a guy to take lightly. Very interesting matchup, and I just feel that Errol comes out with the win, but in tremendous fashion.
Any chance of an upset?
Yeah, there's always a chance for an upset when you talk about a guy who who has power in both hands. Is durable. He's been in big fights. He knows how to conduct himself in big fights. But it really comes down to who can implement their game plan better. And I see Errol going to the body. I just see him, that's what he does, and he's just, you got to get him off of you. How the fuck do you get this guy off of you? He's on you, and he's following you, and he's cutting you off, and Danny can trade and bang. He could fight like that. He could box also. But again, it comes down to who's better at where, and I feel like Errol is better at both places.
Very well said. We got C Hendo in the chat. Yo, we love the support, guys. We're gonna put all these messages.
Hey, that guy right there, man. That's a legend right there, man. First of all, he has all the sneaker plugs, and he knows all of the NBA guys. I'm talking about. Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal. I don't know. He knows all of them, man. Victor Oladipo. He knows all of them, man. So shout out to that man Hendo right there.
Okay. Love the feedback. Also, 90s Kid, we got your question about Nick Diaz. We'll get to that later. We're going to be talking about the Diaz brothers in a little bit, but we got another Garcia and Spence Jr. question. Why is it flying under the radar? Why do you think that is?
I don't think it's flying under the radar. I just think that there's a lot of things going on at the same time. There's a lot of sports happening all at once, and it's all piled up and condensed. And every week, it's some big fight or a big sport event or NFL game or college football or everything. And then on top of that, you throw all the other fights. So there's a lot going on in a condensed amount of time. And yeah, but I still think it's gonna do great. Saturday, I think that it'll do good numbers. let's check the card. Check what the full card is. I'm not sure what the let's see what that card looks like actually.
Yeah, so I got it up here, I think. Let me just see the full thing there. See, I wish BoxRec was like Tapology where you can actually click on. Oh yeah, you can. Hold on one second. I think so. Let me just double check here. Trying to find the full card here. Let me just Google
because I've heard nothing about the other fights on the card. So
no, me neither. And so
that will
let me just double check here. We got it coming up. Let's see here. Good old ESPN's got the card on here. So yeah, you've got Errol Spence and Garcia, 12 rounds, obviously for the IBF and WBC. You got Sebastian Fedora taking on Jorge Cota, 12 rounds, junior middleweights.
Okay.
You've got a TBA against Eduardo Ramirez, 12 rounds. Josiso, let me try. We're going to try something here today. This may or may not work, but I'm going to try it out anyways. Let me see if I can bring the actual card up here so people can see what we're talking about. Let me try this. I've done this before in StreamYard, and then sometimes it goes a little crazy, but we will try this right now. I'm going to try and share my screen.
So some of those names you said on there, those are okay. Yeah, you pulled it up.
It's doing that thing where it goes a little crazy. I don't know why that happens on my thing, but okay, we got it there now. So you can see it there. You see the full card? Let me zoom in.
Yeah, Coda.
So we got Garcia, Fedora, Cota, Ramirez against an opponent, Lopez and Santana, Flores and Avilar.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not a stat card at all, but it's like if these are some people, if you know boxing and you really, really watch it, then you'll know who some of these guys are. But yeah, it's not a stat card. So it's really, for boxing fans, it's a stack card, especially in the lower weights, but not really. In hindsight, it's not. So, yeah.
Isn't that kind of anyways like boxing anyhow, where they kind of just like, they're more focused on the main, like MMA does a better job, I think, of that.
Yeah, but like you just saw the Tyson card, right? So that was more interesting than this card was, is just because there's a lot of fighters, and they try to separate all the fighters or whatnot and put them on different cards. But I think sometimes it's also good to stack those cards with like mixed martial arts, like UFC does.
Well, it's a little bit easier for the UFC too, because they have fighters under one banner. It's easier to put together. With boxers, like I said, it's sort of the big names kind of put everything together, and that's sort of how it comes to fruition as well. And by the way, the question earlier about still up here is about why is it flying under the radar. I think there's such a thing as fatigue. Like I remember when Khabib and Gaethje fought, and in MMA, that's all everyone was talking about after. And I felt bad. I can't even remember what cards were after that, but it's like, you still got to recover from that. We're still recovering from Tyson, right? So I think that's also why you're not seeing a lot of it. And who knows, as we get close, maybe it ramps up a little bit, but I think it's one of those things where there's so much going on, like you said.
It's fight week. The fight is on Saturday. So weigh-ins, today's what? Press day. Tomorrow is open workouts or something, and then Friday's weigh-ins, and then Saturday's the fight. So, so I talked with the Cowboys over the weekend. The organization of Dallas Cowboys, where AT&T Stadium is where the fight is taking place, and this is just how crazy times is. So, on one side, you have the fight taking place with 15,000 fans capacity able to be there, which sounds absolutely crazy to the rest of the country, because they're like, what, 15,000 people in a place? But they don't know Texas moves at the beat of its own drum. And the other part is so crazy that they're not used to having to cut down to 15,000 capacity. They're used to more so 40, 50,000 capacity for a boxing event or a mixed martial arts event over there. Boxing event is what they usually have. And Errol Spence, the last time he did AT&T Stadium, he did about, I believe, 40,000, 41,000, or something of that nature. 48,000. There you go, Taylor, with the fact check right there. So 15,000 is like, that's not, they're like, so they want to sell every single ticket. I was calling them because, I call, say, hey guys, where are my tickets for my fighters? We're trying to attend the fight. And they're like, yo, Kev, it's, we only got 15,000 people, and Fox is the one handling these tickets and handling this for the fight. Right. So, because they got to recuperate every dollar they spend, because, Earl getting paid a lot of money now, you know what I'm saying? So, it's a big fight. Both of those guys are getting paid millions of dollars. So, between that and the marketing, you got to be able to recuperate, not just from the pay-per-view. I think because we just talked about, do we think they're going to do good numbers? I think they'll do all right numbers. I think it'll be decent numbers. I think it'll be good for what it is. But if they want to do better numbers than that, they should have just stacked the card a little bit more than that to be able to really do the numbers that he could do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So decent number, in my opinion, would be, I think if he does 350, 300, I think if he does 350, I think that's good for what it is.
I think so. Yeah, I'm with you there. Sort of last question on this, then we'll move on. This fight would be played at high-level chess, and timing would be key for both opponents. Danny Garcia has the edge in timing, so it'll be interesting to see. So yeah, that's what I like. I love the best thing about fighting, other than most sports, is like it is really a game of inches. Like anything can happen, right? So I mean, this is a high-level fight. It's not like you're getting with some boxing fights and MMA as well. You get fight where it's like you look at the odds and you're like, okay, come on, like what's going on here, right? But this is a close fight, right? So
it's a good observation, but it's a good observation you've made, but I wouldn't call it timing. I would say that Danny Garcia is a counter puncher, so which kind of you could confuse for timing, but which you need good timing to counter, but yeah, he's a counter puncher, so he would rather let you throw for him to counter that with a check right hook, a check left hook, which he loves to throw, or he knocks you out with a right hand hook or a left hand hook, but most of the time it's a left hook that he knocks you out with. So, Errol Spence, has credible speed and power, and he's just good everywhere, really.
Let's get back to some MMA talk as well. We got to answer 90 shit. We got only one title fight booked right now. It's a Figueiredo Moreno, which, I mean, let's be honest, I don't think people are getting too excited about that one. Although the intrigue factor, I will say this, which is kind of cool, right? These guys fought, 2 weeks ago, last week, and now they're fighting again. So that's kind of cool. And adding Charles Oliveira and Tony Ferguson on that card was a good move too. So I'll be tuning in for that one for sure. I mean, I have to anyway, it's my job. But the 90s kid is saying, any word on Zhang, Weili Zhang, the strawweight champion, Piotr Jan, Stipe, Usman, Nunes, Izzy, Volkanovski, Chevy. I mean, all day we got to take up everything. So here's what I know, and I'm gonna get your thoughts after this. Okay, so let's start first with Zhang. So as I've mentioned on my podcast before, and I'll bring it up here, Weili Zhang has the same manager as Rose Namajunas. So in terms of negotiations, I don't think it should be too tough for them to put this fight together. As we know with Rose, ever since the McGregor incident with the whole Dolly, she's been a little bit more selective about fights. I'm not going to sit here and judge her, but that's the reality, right? Like she's not going to just take a short notice fight. That's not Rose's style. If she's going to take this title fight, it's got to be under the right circumstances. So that may hold things up. Who would be the alternative if Rose can't go? Maybe Yan, the girl who beat the other Chinese strawweight who beat Claudia Gadea. You've got Carla Esparza. So there are some options there, but I imagine Zhang's going to get a fight booked here pretty soon. I would think maybe early 2021, something like that. Piotr Yan was supposed to fight Sterling on this card next week. Piotr Yan, some visa issues, some personal stuff. I think they're going to rebook the fight with Sterling. I just don't know when, because some of those cards are filling up as well. Stipe, I think there was some rumblings with him and Ngannou in, I think it's like February or March, so we'll see there. Nunes, same thing. They're going to rebook the fight with Megan Anderson. She's obviously became a parent recently, so they're going to obviously rebook that. Izzy looks like he's going to be fighting Blachowicz at light heavyweight. That's what we're hearing. When that takes place, I don't know. I do find it interesting. They haven't booked a date for that yet. And then Robert Whitaker's putting his hand up saying, hey, I want to fight. I want the rematch. So I think Izzy will go to 205. Volkanovski will likely fight Ortega, I would think. Shevchenko just fought. Let's cool our brakes on that. It'll probably be Andrade. And that's what I know. We talked a lot about there. But Usman, I think, is fighting Burns. That's confirmed, right?
I don't know. I believe so. I think that would just be the direction they would try to go with it, to try to prevent things from getting a little bit out of their control. So you keep the guy who's supposed to get the title shot, you keep him there, because realistically, the reason why that fight didn't happen was the COVID. That's another COVID one.
Yeah,
it's another COVID one, right? So it's not really either one of the guys' faults that the fight didn't happen. And also Usman ends up getting a procedure done after that, I believe. So, you give him a little time. I think by March,
Well, I'm looking on Tapology here. It's saying 258. They're headlining the card. It's February 13th. So usually when Tapology puts that up there, it usually means that it's the real deal. And usually they would put like unconfirmed rumor if it was in there, but I'm not seeing that. So I think it is a done deal. But
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense if they do February them, and then because that clears that situation out, and then you got to clear out who's becoming the more contender after that, which would be between Nate, Jorge, Cobley, and who else would you throw in there? That's the winner of Leon Edwards and
Chimaev. Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
It's a tongue twister. Trust me, I butchered it forever. So it's because it's like I have to talk about him all the time. This guy's like the money train right now. If anything you mention with Chimaev, people are tuning in. So he's a guy I've been riding pretty hard in terms of content. Good question here. Would you guys rather see Israel Adesanya against Jan Blachowicz, light heavyweight champion, or Izzy versus Whitaker 2 and Jan versus Glover? Okay, so I'm gonna have an unpopular opinion here. I am a little bit more in a case like this where there's nobody like really outstanding in terms of like name value. I kind of want to just see these guys stay in their division. Like I'd rather see Izzy rematch Whitaker because Whitaker got knocked out in that fight. Whitaker clearly had an off night in that one. He beat Darren Till in his last fight. Do that rematch. I'm fine with that. And Glover, I mean, come on, this is a guy 41 years old, was an underdog. I think he's been the underdog in his last 5 fights. He finishes Thiago Santos, the guy who people thought John Jones lost to. And now he's got to wait for this fight potentially. I think I would rather see these guys stay in their division. Israel Adesanya's got 2 title defenses at middleweight. Why are we in a rush to see him become the double champ? Especially like if you wanted to move up and fight John Jones and John Jones was the champ, I understand that. That's a huge fight. However, it's Jan Blachowicz. It's like I love the guy, but like he's not a ticket seller like Jones is. So me personally, I would rather see Adesanya stay at middleweight, but there is that intrigue of him becoming a double champ. Where do you stand on this one?
Yeah, I mean, a fighter, has ambitions, and there's things that they see that, there's moments and times where you could exploit a situation and be able to get to that title, that next title. This is one of those moments for him, so I think that he's going to, in my opinion, I'd like to see Izzy fight Whitaker again. Like you, I think that's a good fight. That's the fight to make. But I think that he takes advantage of the moment and goes ahead and takes on Jan, and because you move up, 205. He's not that far from 185. He's already walking around 220 right now.
He's a big guy. I've seen him a couple times. Yeah.
If you saw him on that Mike Tyson card, he looked like he was probably 215, 220 there. So, 205 is not that far down. So he can make that weight, and he could easily outpoint this guy and stay outside and just tap, and and call it a night for the guy. So it's a fight that he could win. You see what I'm saying? So when he's sitting back and he's sitting at home and he's looking at it, it's like the Whitaker fight is a bit harder, and not because he already beat he beat him and he says I could beat him again. But what do I prove? What do I prove then when I already know that I beat him and I could beat him again? But this guy, I could move up one weight class and go get a belt there, and then entice John Jones to come back down and see me there after his heavyweight debut or whatever he's going to do there. And I could hold on to that division, or I can defend both if he could. See, the ambition. It's the ambition with these fighters, the ambition and the opportunity presents itself. You do it, With Conor, it presented itself from 145 to 155. It was right there. It was like, the opportunity presented itself. I'm going to go up before I even defend. So you take opportunity of the moments, and this is a moment that he could take opportunity of.
Very well said. It's like when GSP came back to fight Bisping. He probably knew there was a way he could beat it. Yoel Romero's the champ. If even like Whitaker's the champ at that point, I don't think he comes back. I think he saw as Bisping's getting older. He'd been hit before. He'd lost a Rockhold, prior to the rematch. I think he saw an opening there and he capitalized on it. So that's what it's about. I think I agree with you. Same thing where he's seeing Jan Blachowicz. Blachowicz is not a young chicken. I think he's 38. So it's like, why not try and take advantage of that and become a double champ and be an even bigger superstar than you already are?
Exactly.
We got about 4 minutes left on the show here. Guys, get any last minute questions in here as we wrap things up. We're going to do 90s Kid here again. He says, if Oliveira finishes Tony, does he deserve a title shot? Well, let's first off just point out, I don't mean to be disrespectful here, but the word deserve in MMA and combat sports in general doesn't really exist, right? It's more about like, what is the best business decision? And look, I've been high on Charles Oliveira for a very long time. What he did to Kevin Lee earlier this year, to me, showed that he is a top 5 lightweight. It's a great test against Tony Ferguson here. Does he deserve the shot? Maybe, but the thing is, we need some clarity there. Habib's still out there. He's still in the testing pool. He's not officially retired as far as I'm concerned. You've got McGregor and Poirier. You know they want McGregor to be the champion again. You know that. Like, if this Habib thing doesn't get sorted out, don't be surprised if that main event fight with Poirier and McGregor gets turned into a title fight. That's what I think. So, yeah, I mean, unfortunately with Oliveira, he's not a moneymaker, right? So even if he gets this win, I don't know if there's going to be a big push from the UFC to get a guy who doesn't speak really great English, doesn't market himself very well. And I love Charles Oliveira. I'm saying this as a fan of his. I'm just looking at this from a business perspective. I think if Oliveira beats Ferguson, I don't think he'll get that title shot. I think they would try and either put Gaethje back in there, do something, but I think you're going to try and get Conor as the champ. What's your perspective on this as you take a deep breath?
Tony's coming off of a loss, right?
He is dominant loss.
And it's a bad loss, right? Yeah. Where he really got outclassed. So if Oliveira beats him, he beat a guy that just comes off of a bad loss. You know,
right.
I'm more interested to see how he comes back after how bad. You know, when a guy, it's different when a guy gets knocked out than when a guy just gets out dominated and outstruck for 5 rounds, 4 rounds, however long that was, an outclass, and that's a beating a guy takes. You know, which affects you a lot more than just getting knocked out where a guy catches you. So that's who Oliveira is going to go in there with to see, and then it remains to see how he bounced back from that. But Tony's a hard guy, tough guy, and he works hard. So we'll see how that plays out. But does he deserve a title shot after that? No, I don't think he does. But he puts himself in the mix. He puts himself in the mix, in the conversation with the rest of the guys, and then it has to work its way itself from there. Now, obviously, that Conor versus Dustin is the fight that, you're going to hear the word interim probably going to get thrown in there somewhere closer to the date, or there's going to be for the undisputed belt. And that's if they are able to make this Khabib versus George St. Pierre fight, which they are clearly still.
Ali tweeted today.
Yeah,
Did you see that?
He's pushing for it. He's pushing for it, as you can see. So, he's trying to push for his client. So we'll see how everything plays out.
I think if Tony wins, then that might put him in that picture, because Tony's a name, right? He's a guy that there's some certain fan bases. The Tony Ferguson fan base is a ruthless one. If you even suggest that Tony Ferguson is not going to win a fight, they will come after you. They came for my head when I picked Gaethje over him. I thought Gaethje was more active, whatever. I didn't hear the end of this for weeks, and I'm a big Tony fan. It was just one of those things where it's hard to pick against a guy who's older and has injuries, but we'll see against Oliveira. Really tough fight.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that plays out. Yeah, interesting.
Okay, we got 4 more questions. We'll get to them as we're wrapping stuff up. I really appreciate the support here. Do you think Teixeira waits it out for a title shot or takes his chances against and fights again before? If Izzy beats Jan, Glover's screwed. Yeah, I don't think Glover takes another fight. At his age, if he takes one more fight, it could be the end. If he loses one more fight, Glover's never going to fight for a title again. So yeah, I think he waits. He waits it out.
Yeah, I mean, you're an older guy. Let that body rest up, take your time and just wait. I mean, this is your one last shot. This is probably your last shot. This is definitely your last shot.
His last shot.
So you just wait for your shot, and when it presents itself, you take it. Now, I don't think you're gonna wait a year. I think you're probably gonna wait, 4, 5, 6 months max, and then you'll get your shot.
I'm with you there. Any word on the Soldier of God? I'd love to see him versus Costa again in a 5-round main event fight night. So I've heard 2 things. Number one, I've heard is that he's injured, and that's why the Hall fight was off. And then Uriah Hall went on to, I saw him post something on Instagram saying that the UFC wants him to move up to 205, which I actually think would be an interesting move. He's had like 5 title shots at middleweight, like maybe time for a change of scenery. But to answer your question, I've not heard much. I should reach out to his manager. Actually, it's been a while since I've touched base with him, Mr. Kawa there. But yeah, I haven't heard anything on Romero. You heard anything?
I think Yoel won that fight versus Costa. Honestly,
it was close.
Speaking,
that was the same card as Nate and Pettis, right?
Yeah, I thought he won the fight. The fight.
It was close. Yeah,
I thought he won the fight, and yeah, man. I mean, it'll be interesting to see him come back, but I think he'll be in line somewhere. See, there's not a lot of big names over there, so putting him back in the mix helps that, that whole division.
Aaron also says Woodley, Chimaev. I get where you're going with this, but the reason he's fighting Edwards is because of the ranking. Woodley's colder than ever right now. He's lost a couple fights in a row. There's no way they're going to do that fight, for Woodley, and Woodley loses that. I feel pretty confident about that. And then last question as we're wrapping things up: thoughts on Khabib trying to push MMA and do the Olympics? Good for him, but when you got the UFC and you got one company, that's like, it's just not going to happen. I think the only way they could do it is if they did it through the amateur ranks, where they're like, hey, if you're like on the regional scene, maybe we'll put you guys in the Olympics that way. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of hurdles to climb.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't want to put their professionals in there,
Can't risk losing your moneymaker.
The NBA hates every year when they got to send those pros to the USA trials and Olympics and all of that. They hate that. They don't want to do that. So nobody's would be for that, And I think, maybe the amateurs, make sense over there, and it helps you build up some credibility so you could come into the pros with that gold medal like the boxers used to do back in the days.
Yeah, back when Lennox Lewis fought for Canada. You remember that? I don't know if it was the Olympics, but I remember that.
He's a gold medalist for Canada.
He was,
1988, 87, something like that.
Yeah. Long before I was watching boxing. I was probably, still hanging out as a kid there. But episode 1 in the books today, guys. Was this not fun? Was this not awesome? This is just a sample of what is going to be coming here on this podcast every week. This has been fun. A lot of good chemistry. It's been cool. I'm excited to see him. Maybe we'll get some guests on. Who knows? There's lots of potential here. Shout out to Taylor, by the way, behind the scenes, giving us some good input behind the scenes as well. Love having him. We're going to get him on at some point, Kev. Trust me, we'll convince him.
Taylor just sent us. You see, Taylor's here. He's producing the show, and he just said that he corrected us. He said 88. So it corrects. That's 88.
This is why we got him here. He's Mr.
Medals.
Google. He's Mr. Google. There you go. That's awesome. Usually this is where I tell people to plug all their social media. You can definitely do that. You can see the handle on there on Instagram. But what do you got going on this weekend, man? What's the latest? We're middle of the week here.
Well, probably gonna head down to Dallas. We're in Los Angeles right now. I got a couple guys training out here. Head down to to Dallas, Texas for the Errol Spence card. We'll see. I called, obviously, like I told you guys, I called the Cowboys for the tickets, and they told me to talk to Fox. So I got to talk to Fox now. So we'll figure out what Fox
crack some heads here. Get some tickets.
Yeah. We got to figure this thing out. But yeah,
there you go.
So hopefully we'll be at that fight.
Yeah, no. Well, I'll be keeping tabs on IG if you're posting any stuff there. I do not have an exciting weekend. I have to help my grandparents move. I wish I had more exciting news here, but I will be watching the fights. You know me. I'm busy, keeping busy doing my interviews. You guys can check me out at Lynch on Sports. If you guys missed it yesterday, got an exclusive interview yesterday with Macy Barber. If you guys remember her, she was wanting to be the youngest champion in UFC history. Lost her last fight, brutal injury, ended up losing to Roxanne Modafferi, but we got the exclusive for you guys and some cool tidbits from that. She actually switched gyms. She's no longer at Rufus Sports. She's now training in Chicago at Valley Striking with Izzy Martinez and getting to work with Yair Rodriguez, Bilal Muhammad. So we'll see if that pays dividends. She fights in February. So like I said, you guys are going to be getting exclusive top of the line interviews here on Fanatics View. Really excited to be working with these guys. We'll be back here next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. We got to get more people in here. We will. It's just a matter of time, baby steps, as I say. But we love the questions today. Just keep them coming. Not just MMA, boxing as well. So hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Like I said, we'll be back here. And I hope you guys have a great weekend, girls as well, including everyone here. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. And we will be back next week. Have a good one.